Well, hello there. Welcome to the 6th edition. I am Chisom Okafor. Let us begin with the top stories at this hour. Over 50 children feared dead as deadly outbreak spreads through Kano communities. IGP Disu orders police to treat mob violence as homicide, warns against extrajudicial killings. And Tanzania Vice President Nchimbi quits, announces exit from politics and public service. We'll bring you details on this and more. Stay with us. Now, a deadly diphtheria outbreak is raising fresh concerns in Kano State, with lawmakers saying more than 50 children have died in Rano local government area. The Kano State House of Assembly is calling for an urgent government response as diphtheria spreads through communities in Rano and neighboring areas. Lawmakers say the outbreak has been particularly severe in Ridin and Subarwa Kwara. While cases have also been reported in parts of Kiru, they are demanding more emergency medical support, vaccination, and preventive measures to contain the disease. The warning comes a year after a similar outbreak reportedly claimed several lives in the area. The Assembly has now directed its Health Committee to engage the Ministry of Health on emergency relief and implementation of measures under the state's health protection law. We will be having our correspondent Stephen Enoch join us much later to understand the situation in Kano State. But for now, Muslims across Kano still are joining others around the world to mark Maulud, the commemoration of the birth of Prophet Muhammad, which is known as Maulud. News Central is at the Emir's Palace in Kano, speaking with residents and worshippers about what the day means to them, how they are celebrating, and the values they believe the occasion represents. We will be having Stephen give us a report on that as well in a moment. Now, the Inspector General of Police, Olatunji Disu, has directed police commissioners across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory to treat every case of mob violence as a homicide. Speaking in a video posted on the X handle of the Nigerian police force, Disu says no community, vigilante group or association has the legal authority to arrest, try, convict or execute anyone based on suspicion, accusations, rumors or social media evidence. He warns that jungle justice violates Nigerians' constitutional rights to life, dignity and fair hearing. The IGP also stressed that Nigeria operates under the rule of law and not mob rule. This also reminds the public that every suspect is presumed innocent until proven guilty in court, adding that photographs, videos, and allegations cannot replace proper police investigation and judicial proceedings.
Without ambiguity, jungle justice is murder. It is not justice. It is a crime, and the Nigerian police force will treat it as such. It is illegal, full stop. Nigeria operates under the rule of law, not mob rule. No citizen, no community, no group has the right to try, sentence, or execute another person. Nobody. Sections 33, 34, and 36 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended guarantees every Nigerian, even a suspect, the right to life, dignity, and fair hearing.
Now, Nigeria's rising insecurity and the activities of armed groups have renewed calls for stronger security and justice institutions. The issue was at the center of discussion at the Nigeria Bar Association's annual General Conference in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, where legal practitioners, security stakeholders examined the gaps allowing violent crimes to persist and what can be done to strengthen the response to known and unknown gunmen.
State police is the way to go. I believe in it. What I think we should do is that we should not allow them to behave like the present Nigerian police force. Lawyers must get involved in training them lawyers must assist their clients to pursue their rights to the end so that we don't give them that liberty to start behaving with impunity.
Right? We are so overwhelmed with using men, and men cannot do it. Men bring corruption, they bring about all of these things. So, but when you have the machines, the drones, the scanners, and everything, I think it will be able to help us. So we should leverage on technology.
The root cause of insecurity is politics. The people that benefit from it are the cause of the insecurity. The government benefits, the police benefit, the military men benefit. The customs will seize contraband goods, rice. But you don't know how guns are entering Nigeria.
Well, from that very packed panel, now joining me in the studio to have our panel is Jerry Babaleye, a legal practitioner. Hello, Jerry. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
I believe you've been following up on those conversations.
very
They
much,
target the known gunmen parley.
Yeah.
Now, pushing past the whole rhetoric, right, and that whole gathering, and moving to action, what do you think, as a lawyer, are the legal reforms, concrete legal reforms that the NBA must push to ensure that the security gaps that were exposed during this plenary are actually fixed?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think one of the major roles the NBA can play as a pressure group in Nigeria is that of accountability and pressuring accountability on the part of the government, which encompasses the executive and the legislative arm, because these are the people empowered. The executive, for example, are empowered to provide for the military, the police, provide the funding needed to pursue security architecture. The legislative are also empowered to serve as check and balance on the executive. And it appears that those people are not really doing their work, to be honest, because, if we still have a lot of insecurity cases in the country, it means there is a lacuna in effective, work doing. And one of the ways the NBA can come in is to actually pressure them to do their job. I would look forward to the incoming NBA president on setting up maybe a subcommittee on security. I think we have that already, but I think it's not so effective. I think that it should be mainstream, and we should do a lot of pressuring, because as lawyers, we have a role to play, definitely.
Now, let's talk about collaboration. How can policymakers bridge what people are calling the trust deficit between public, legal system and the security leaders, to successfully actually fight this insecurity?
Thank you very much for that question. And it still boils down to accountability, because, I was watching the panel session earlier today, and one of the major things that was mentioned by the representative of the Inspector General was the issue of accountability. He said it's not even about providing new funding. It's about even the existing funding. How is it being used? Who are the people in charge? And are they really? And that's a problem that we've always had in Nigeria. People that are in charge of these funds, what are they doing with it? So the legislative must actually play this role. How are the money apportioned to the Nigerian police, for example, how is it being spent? What is the wage of a police officer in the country? What is the welfare package? What is the retirement package? This is important. If you want to put someone out there to fight, to protect a country, you must actually pay him well. You must remunerate him well, encourage him. And if that is not, there's a lot of things can go wrong. Even the bandits can bribe him and give him something bigger than what the government is offering him. So that the legislative has to play that role of pressuring the executive, make sure the money is spent well. And
it's funny you mentioned that, because the IGP was represented at this panel. We had representative of the DSS as well.
Yes.
So all of the main people were there to answer the question of accountability.
Yes.
So if they are calling for accountability, aren't they the ones that we're supposed to hold accountable?
Yeah.
Right.
True.
So now, you watching that, what would you have to say to that, especially him saying that as the IGP, especially being the one that's supposed to be held accountable?
Right. And I think, once again, that's a place where reform comes in, just like you mentioned. There's a need for reform, especially when we're talking about security in Nigeria. We used to have the Nigeria Police Commission. We need to ask ourselves questions like, how effective is that body? Have they not also been corrupted? Who are the people in charge? What are they doing? Right now there are conversations around state policing. We need to have the conversation of how is that going to work? How is the funding? Where's the funding coming from? Is it from the governors? Whom we know how they are. Okay. So those are the issues.
I need to get your thoughts on another matter before we do let you go. Aside from the NBA conference happening, the IGP, Inspector General of Police, recently called for a crackdown on violent mob, and talking about that vigilantes should not execute people. And now he said that no community, no vigilante group has the authority to arrest or even try anyone.
True,
but given that in many communities in Nigeria, many of them rely on these groups that was mentioned due to the shortage of formal police, how would this directive affect the operations?
I personally feel the IGP was right to have said what he said, especially in the recent rise of jungle justice across the country. It's appalling, it's bad, Only the police has the constitutional power to try and prosecute criminal offenses in the country. The vigilantes bodies might be helpful in identifying the suspects, but they should hand them over to the police. Their work stops at identifying and handing over to the police. They have no constitutional power to try or to punish or to, no one has given them that power. So we must have that in mind. Vigilantes are good, especially in the recent, of course, inability of the police, but they have restrictions and we must stick to that restriction. If not, we can have a society that nobody wants to live in, where everyone wants to kill everyone because, vigilante or not. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jerry Babale, legal practitioner, helping us understand some of these issues. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much.
Now, we'll take a moment. When we return, we'll go to Niger State for more stories. To stay with us. Thank you for staying there. Well, earlier on, we brought you a story about the diphtheria outbreak that is raising fresh concerns in Kano State, and equally the Eid al-Maulud celebration in Kano State. We now have our correspondent, Stephen Enoch, who is standing by to give us more details on this. Stephen, let us begin with the outbreak. What are the authorities saying, and what are the major moves being made to help curtail this? 50 children feared dead. Can you tell us more on that?
So one thing to note is that they said 50 dead, and until we get to the local government area, before we can ascertain the actual number, because from that period till now, they might have had some casualties, but we are sticking with 50. So currently I'm at the Kano Center for Disease Control, and there's going to be a press briefing on what the government wants to do, or what the government intends to do to curtail the spread of diphtheria. And one thing for you to understand is that in Kano, when this outbreak happens, it happens in the villages, in the rural areas, and sometimes when people see the signs, when the diphtheria happens, there is a green substance that is at the end of the tongue, right? And what these people do sometimes is that they call this local, let's say, medicine men, who they call bonzame, and then sometimes they use razor blade to cut off that, to remove that substance. They use some kind of blade or razor blade, or or maybe knife or an object to remove that substance, and after that they believe that it has been dealt with, and these children still go around the neighborhood, they interact with others, and that's how the spread continues. Sometimes they use traditional medicine to want to cure it, but sometimes it doesn't work. Actually, it doesn't work, because if it has worked, we won't have this high number of mortality, mostly, and in fact, it's children actually. So we'll go there tomorrow and get exactly what is happening, because from what I spoke with someone over there, and they said there's so many hospitals, children are dying, and there's so much concerns there. So by 6:30, I should believe they should start the press briefing, and I'll give you more updates about what's happening in Kano. And one thing to understand is that in Kano State, parents are also kind of apprehensive, because we're in the holiday season. Children are always going around to mingle with their friends, so they're trying to see how, from interaction with people, they're trying to see how they can maybe prevent their children from playing or getting to places that they are not sure of, so that their children may not have.
Stephen, if you can hear me, you mentioned, because we know that this has been reported in that area before. Can we talk about sensitization? Yes. Because if it has happened in the area before and now it's happening now with that huge number, you just mentioned how this is being handled by parents, maybe because they do not know better. Can you tell us more about what the state government is doing about sensitizing these people and letting them know about this?
Yeah, so the state government has sensitized people, but I believe more needs to be done. I belong to, there's a particular platform where they try to speak to parents about immunization, zero dose, and also making sure that children get all the immunizations they need to get before some certain age, and also inform them about the fact that when they see anything abnormal in their children, they should not rely on traditional doctors. They should go to the hospital and report it. So I believe the government is doing their bit, or doing their best in terms of sensitization, but I believe more needs to be done because it is not only in the Rano local government areas. There are other places like Iru where it's happening and Konandangora where it's happening too. So I believe, a better approach needs to be used to educate people on the need to understand what this is and how to attack this by going to the hospital or reporting to health authorities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephen Enoch, our correspondent there in Kano, bringing us up to speed on that. And of course, we await what the press briefing brings out. Thank you very much, Stephen. An armed group has released a video showing about 600 people allegedly abducted during a mosque attack in Nigeria's Niger State. Residents identified women, children and elderly relatives among the captives, while several children could be heard crying in the forested footage. The video's location or exact date has not been independently verified, and authorities are yet to confirm the number abducted. I'm now being joined by Ndamitso Ibrahim, a journalist joining us from Kwara State, I believe. Ndamitso, can you tell us more about this development in the state, this footage? 600 people, that is a lot of numbers. What more can you tell us?
Okay, I'm in Niger State, and this incident actually occurred on Friday after the terrorists themselves had performed the Friday prayers alongside the locals, which they took kidnapped. And since then, there has not been detail as regards what exactly is the figure officially. Again, yesterday, these terrorists released a video showing and claiming that there are over 500 kidnapped victims with them. So there is no official statement so far from government or from the military as regards...
Actually, there is now. The presidency seemed to have confirmed that, because we're getting reports that the presidency has directed the military and obviously all the security personnel to make sure they rescue this people that we're seeing in this video. What do you have to say about that?
Yes, there is a confirmation that it actually happened, but there is no official statement as regards the number of people who are kidnapped and the number of people who are dead, because these areas are largely ungoverned and they are extremely dangerous to access for a lot of security men and even journalists like me who will usually visit these communities after attack.
Absolutely. So in the coming days, with the fact that the military is quiet for now, do you think it's because they are trying to investigate, or do you think because they are already ahead, like trying to do the rescue and then maybe give us some updates later?
Yes, I was in contact with the Commissioner for Homeland in Niger State, and he said they are still waiting for the military and the security agencies to furnish them with the details as regards the incident. But locals have identified there are people in the video, and they have also confirmed that a lot of people, the raiding was not just in one community, it was in several communities, about 4 to 5 communities. So it is not a one-off community incident, so locals could not identify completely how many people were picked. And this is not just happening only on the account of kidnapping, but there are several other people who were killed and have not been accounted for because of the turbulent nature of the place, because of the risk associated with accessing that forest.
Absolutely. Ndamitso Ibrahim, a journalist in Niger State, helping us understand what is happening there. And hopefully the military will definitely swing into action and will get results in the coming days. Thank you, Ndamitso.
Thank you for having me.
Moving from Niger State now to Kwara State, following the abduction of a 23-year-old Fasilat Babatunde in Wande community, Ifelodun local government area of Kwara State, residents have reportedly abandoned the community and fled to nearby Ora and Patakor communities for safety. Fasilat was abducted during an attack in which her father was reportedly shot while attempting to resist the attackers. Our correspondent, Joshua Imarayi, was in Wande and brings us the latest.
Where we are currently is Wande community in Ifelodun local government area of Kwara State. And following the abduction of Fasila Babatunde, we understand that members of this community have fled this community in fear of their safety. We also understand that they have fled to neighboring communities, Patako and Ora communities, for safety. There is a gentleman who resides in this community, and he is among the few persons we saw in this community, and I would like to understand the magnitude of the situation here. Ekason sir. Orúkọ yín ni
Daniel Wande. Bẹ́ẹ̀ni.
A gbọ́ pé láti gba àwọn ajínigbé wọ́n wá sí àyín, wọ́n wá jí Fásilá pé nǹkan burúkú ṣẹlẹ̀. Ẹ sọ fún wa kan tó ṣẹlẹ̀.
So, kódà níjọ́ yín gangan àwọn Hausa Wande yìí àti nílé níjọ́ nǹkan ti ṣẹlẹ̀ yìí àti nílé àti lọ lọ́dọ̀ à ń ṣiṣẹ́ kòzà. Tó adé apè wá ní fóònù jẹ́ ká wálé nǹkan ti ṣẹlẹ̀ ní Wande àti dé. Tó àwárí àwọn nǹkan àti gbé Fásilá lọ àti yan ìbọn fún àwọn bàbá Jamiu.
So láti ìgbà yẹn àwọn tó ń gbé nínú àyín níbo wọ́n wà?
Ṣé àti ẹ̀mí gan àti ẹ̀mí kò tí mọ̀. Ẹ̀mí gangan Wande mọ̀ wá àmọ́ àti mọ̀ tó kàn án ti ṣẹlẹ̀ ní lọ́dọ̀ àwọn èèyàn ni ó ti lọ àti mọ̀.
Kí n sùn bí?
Nísìbà àti sùn bí Wande ọ̀rà ni a máa sùn.
So you just heard from Mr. Daniel. He's one of the few persons remaining in this community. We understand that ever since that incident happened, they fled this community in fear of their safety. They just come, pick the things they need, tend to their farm, and leave this community nothing more than 4 p.m. This is the situation in Wande community in the Ifelodun local government area of Kwara State. Joshua Imarai for News Central.
Our correspondent there, Joshua Imarai, bringing us update from the community. The United States military has begun specialized training for Nigerian troops in unmanned aircraft systems, combat casualty care, and other military skills. The training is taking place in Bauchi State under a security cooperation program designed to improve military readiness and operational capacity. AFRICOM says the program covers tactical medicine, weapons handling, explosive ordnance disposal, small unit tactics, and drone operations. Nigerian personnel are also receiving practical training in operating unmanned aircraft systems. The exercise is aimed to strengthen cooperation and interoperability between Nigerian and the American forces. We'll go on a break now. When we return, Nigeria's fuel subsidy journey, years of price hikes, protest, policy shift. All of that and more. Stay with us. Yes, it is still the 6th edition. If you're just joining us, let us have a recap of our top stories. Over 50 children feared dead as deadly outbreak spreads through Kano communities. IGP Disu orders police to treat mob violence as homicide, warns against extrajudicial killings. And Tanzania Vice President Nchimbi quits, announces exit from politics and public service. Now, for years, fuel subsidy has been a major issue for Nigerian families. Successive governments have tried to remove or reduce the subsidy, but each attempt has come with its own challenges. Under Olusegun Obasanjo, fuel price increases sparked protest. Umaru Musa Yar'Adua kept the subsidy in place, allowing Nigerians to buy petrol at lower regulated prices. Then came 2012. Goodluck Jonathan removed the subsidy, but then the sudden rise in petrol prices led to nationwide protests. The Muhammadu Buhari administration later moved towards deregulation. On May 29, 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu announced the removal of the subsidy. And since then, many Nigerians have faced higher transport fares, food prices, and business costs. As the 2027 election approaches, Tinubu wants the subsidy to remain. Atiku wants to bring it back, while Peter Obi wants the subsidy to stay removed, but says the savings should be used to improve people's lives. Now, from that data, I'm now being joined by Festus Oguche, who is a law expert and public affairs analyst. Good evening to you, Festus.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for taking out the time to join us this evening.
Right. Thank you.
Let's begin in 2023. During the campaign season, we saw Atiku Abubakar famously calling a fuel subsidy a fraud and promising to remove it if he was elected president. Now it's 2027. 2027 is coming, and he's promising a new subsidy model. In your opinion, as a public affairs analyst, is this shift a realistic economic strategy to rescue Nigerians?
Atiku had never feigned ignorance of the effects of the fuel subsidy regime. As a matter of fact, before that date, before that 2023, he had always been very vocal about economic liberalization and questioned the validity of the fuel subsidy regime. So coming now to say that he's opposed to it, it's not a shift there. Well, I think it's as a result of the effects of the regime, the removal of the regime, which does not pander very well to the interest of Nigerians, alongside with all the promises that are attached to it. Atiku may not be wrong. He may not also be right, because the president has said that he does not conform with the current realities and dynamics of the economic system, which I think is true to the extent that the fuel subsidy regime has been very problematic. And successive regimes of government have always attacked it because it is draining on our economic values and affecting the economic sustainability and advancement for quite some time. So its removal was called for, and a lot of the presidential candidates, including Peter Obi, are making case for its sustainability. That it's not the best thing for our economy, for us to grow, for us to advance beyond the ordinary level of the macroeconomic and microeconomic levels that we find ourselves. But the crux of the matter is that the removal may not be very much in the interest of the welfare of the citizens, because the country was looking at macroeconomic values without studying the social aspect of the welfare of the people, which is the primary purpose of governments. And what we are seeing from the regime, particularly the recent speech by the Minister of Finance on what they have done with the benefits of the regime, is quite annoying. It raises a lot of eyebrows as to the validity of the removal. The removal, I will not say is in the interest of the people. I would rather say that, excuse me, I would rather say that it has not pandered to the will of Nigerians to a large extent, because it has created levels of poverty that are unprecedented.
I mean, there's been a claim by Atiku saying that this government is secretly still paying subsidy. That has been a claim as well. So if that is happening, right, do you now think that Nigeria can never get out of this situation we find ourselves? That is, if the claim is right, that this government is still paying subsidy, then how will that now help?
You and I cannot verify that claim here because we don't have.
But he made the claim, and we're talking about him.
That claim. But I know very well that there are so many underpinnings in the removal of the subsidy regime and how it is being implemented and applied that meets the ordinary eyes. And these raise a lot of questions. There has not been much transparency, in spite of the fact that the minister had told us what they are doing with the money, the extent that the regime had gone to take care of servicing of debts, the extent that it has done into providing the cost of administration and the other things, overheads. But then we've not seen it directly with our own eyes how these things are being pandered. We hear the figure like 15 trillion naira, that's a lot of money. It can transform this country, it can reduce the cushion effects of poverty across the length and breadth of this country. But we are not seeing much of it in what is on the table of the Nigerian people, the family, in terms of feeding, in terms of reducing excruciating poverty, in terms of taking away penury, and to a large extent creating jobs, employment, and advancing the cost of our economy.
So let's look at what Atiku is promising, a subsidy that is strictly budgeted and finite. This is just a summary, right? But Nigeria's fuel pricing is tied to global oil prices, as you know, and of course more. Now, if the landing cost, let's say, spikes beyond the budgeted cap, how can not just him or any administration realistically actually maintain that cap?
It will be really very difficult because you have to balance the whole thing. There must be some bit of equalization and the harmonization of these inroads that are engaged in advancing the subsidy regime if you want it to go the proper way you want it to. But then the crux of the matter is the welfare of the people, that Nigerians have suffered the kind of poverty that they've never experienced since the creation of this country. It is unprecedented. And if Atiku is saying that there could be a reversal, then of course he's looking at it from the prism of the fact that the welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government, that we cannot continue to advance macroeconomic theories and economic advancements or benefits of the subsidy regime when we are not seeing anything handy to hold on to say that, yes, this is what we have gotten as Nigerians throughout these years of subsidy removal. I don't think there's been any benefit at all, in spite of government propaganda to that effect. I think to a large extent the government has been very taciturn in telling Nigerians what they are doing with the subsidy regime benefits. There hasn't been much transparency, I must confess.
Talking about transparency, we mentioned Peter Obi earlier, who is arguing that the subsidy must remain, but the savings must be transparent and be reinvested into infrastructure. Atiku, on the other hand, wants to bring subsidy back to directly lower pump price, like you mentioned. This is how it's going to affect Nigerians' lives directly. In your opinion, as a public affairs analyst, which of these two opposition approaches is more sustainable for our future as a country?
I think Peter Obi's, because he's advancing, he's advocated that the first subsidy regime should not be removed, but then you have to reform the process. Reforms means that you're going to take out all the things that are underway or weigh upon it in a manner that makes it inaccessible and unimplementable. Peter Obi's prescription will be said to be very, very okay on that side, if it can be properly well harnessed, considering the fact that there is need for improvement on what we have now, because what we have now actually poses a lot of questions on the legitimacy of that regime, on the viability of that regime, on the economic value of that regime, to the extent that it has solved our fiscal policies, problems with our fiscal policy, or problems with our monetary policy, and problems with our internal economic structure.
No, actually, he's arguing that the subsidy must remain gone. Like, he's not for Atiku reversing the fuel subsidy. Peter Obi is for the subsidy to remain gone, but he's not demanding that the proceeds from that savings, it will now be reinvested. That is his argument. So it's like opposing.
Remaining gone may not be the final solution, because you have to first of all identify what actually is the subsidy, what's the extent of that subsidy, to what effect has it affected the economy, what's the volume of the transactions, as for us to understand the effect if it goes at the end of the day. If it will be advancing that is advancing or prescribing that the subsidy remains, then of course there must be some tinkering. That's the point I'm trying to make. Tinkering with the fuel subsidy regime to the extent to which we can look at the outflows and inflows and understand how it will satisfy the Nigerian yearning for a better life and a better conditions of existence. But then Atiku has this point in the fact that he's looking at the people, which is very essential.
But are we not going to look at corruption, sir? Because one of the major issues that we face and critics had during the subsidy regime was there was deep-seated corruption. There was
is there no corruption even now that the subsidy is removed? We were talking about transparency for a while ago.
I mean,
transparency is very, very important. I can tell you now that we don't know a lot of what has happened.
But the government did come out to explain to us on what they have spent. They did say it's very open, it's in the public, and the Minister of Finance website. You can find how the money
I'm not satisfied with that explanation, because there are certain monies that is spent. For instance, it will be difficult to explain to people that there's success in the fuel subsidy removal because government has been able to empower itself and advance the course, or maybe give better revenue standing to all the organic structures, the state and local government, while the people are reeling in poverty. I totally disagree with that. So to that extent, we begin to understand fairly that there has been so much water under the bridge that we cannot understand clearly what the fuel subsidy of how to the extent to which it has gone in assuaging the problems of the people, in defining the economy, in showing us the sense of direction, giving us the sense of direction as to what to go, how to go about redefining ourselves and redefining our economic and social values.
Well, law expert and public affairs analyst there, Festus Oguche, helping us understand this better. Thank you again, sir, for taking the time this evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Grateful.
Now, earlier on, we mentioned that the United States military has begun specialized training for Nigerian troops in unmanned aircraft systems, combat casualty care, and other military skills. I will be joined by AIG Abutu Yara, who has been on standby. He's a consultant and national security strategist. He's going to be joining us to talk about all of these and more, and of course, some of the stories and insecurities that we've taken earlier. We're going to get into that conversation right after this break. Stay with us. We head to Tanzania now, where the Vice President Emmanuel Nchimbi has resigned from office, saying he wants to respect President Samia Suluhu Hassan's wishes for a change in leadership. Nchimbi announced that his resignation will take effect on September 4th, saying he had previously promised to step down if the president wanted a different vice president. The resignation comes just a week after the suspension of the critical Mwanahalisi newspaper, which had reported alleged divisions between Nchimbi and President Hassan. The development also comes amid growing concerns over political and press freedoms in Tanzania following deadly election unrest last year and criticism of the country's election by international observers. Nchimbi said he would also retire from politics and public service. There has been no immediate official reaction from the presidency. A tornado has ripped through Pomas in southern France, injuring at least 39 people and leaving residents in shock. Roofs were torn apart and buildings damaged, while authorities reported power outages and transport disruptions across parts of southwestern France. The village mayor says some residents have lost everything as severe storms prompted orange weather alerts across the region.
Et je suis sortie pour fermer les volets et donc j'ai eu une tuile et 5 points de suture.
Donc c'était à l'hôpital?
Je suis allée à l'hôpital voilà, hier et je suis rentrée à 23 h. Il y avait énormément de monde. De victimes, mon fils, la maison, elle est inhabitable alors qu'il vient de l'acheter il y a de ça 3 mois. Donc voilà, c'est une catastrophe. Il y a plus malheureux que moi, mais bon, ça reste quand même, c'est quand même, voilà, c'est douloureux quand même. Moi, ça reste douloureux. On le voit à la télévision. Et on a pitié d'eux, mais on n'imagine pas que ça peut nous arriver, quoi.
In the Middle East, Israeli police have arrested an UNRWA vocational training center in East Jerusalem as authorities move to remove the UN agency from the site. Israel's foreign ministry says the facility will become a community and educational center serving thousands of Arab residents in Kafr Kab. Israeli officials accuse UNRWA of obstructing the center's reopening, while National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir says authorities are working to evict the agency. Kano State. Earlier on, we brought you reports of the deadly diphtheria outbreak that is raising fresh concerns in the state. Our correspondent Stephen Enoch mentioned the press briefing that would be happening, and it is currently going on right now for us to better understand the situation on ground and government's preparedness.
Recently, the Kano State House of Assembly, which gave birth to the Kano State Center for Disease Control through its law, KNCDC law of 2025, debated on the floor of the House a report by a honorable member of the House who reported over 50% of cases of death due to diphtheria in the local government. The KNCDC has 2 officers called the Disease Surveillance and Notification Officers, DSMOs, in the local government. And we've been receiving daily reports. And when we analyzed January to August, we realized we had 32 cases of diphtheria reported to us, 7 of which were complicated cases, which were referred to the isolation center in the infectious disease hospital. And we had 2 cases. So when the honorable member reported more than 50, we realized these are people who have not been reporting to the hospital. So we call on the general public to please report cases of diphtheria and other diseases as early as possible, immediately they notice any symptoms.
So what is the government going to do in order to curtail this high number of diphtheria cases in Kano State?
Yes, the government is, Alhaji Abducted Yusuf is doing a lot. After setting up the KNCDC, we have what we call the EPR from the Emergency Preparedness and Response Fund. And just recently, we have a catch of drugs and other consumables. So the KNCDC is also working with the national to procure vaccines so that we cover the whole state with vaccine, because majority of these people falling down with diphtheria are children who have never been even vaccinated at all.
Well, from Kano State now to business. Nigeria's domestic petrol consumption dropped 25% in July 2026 to 35.7 million litres per day, down from 47.4 million litres per day in June, according to Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority data. Daily premium motor spirit supply also fell 21% to 25.8 million litres per day, despite lower demand. Stock sufficiency improved, with petrol cover rising to 22.4 days from 19.7 days. Diesel receipts jumped 46%, while consumption dipped 8%. Aviation fuel demand fell 41%. Liquefied petroleum gas was the exception, with consumption up 7%. Dangote Refinery produced 25.9 million litres per day of premium motor spirit in July. Japan will sharply increase residency fees for foreign nationals from October 2026, with some costs rising over 12 times. Under a new ordinance, extending or changing status will jump from 6,000 yen to as much as 75,000 yen, depending on duration. Permanent residency applications will rise from 10,000 yen to 200,000 yen, a 20-fold increase. The hikes follow a revised immigration law and aim to cover administrative costs amid record foreign residents of 4.13 million in 2025. Reductions may apply in financial hardship or humanitarian cases. That is all we have at this hour. Before we go, let us take another look at some of our major stories. We told you that over 50 children are feared dead as deadly outbreaks spreads through Kano communities. IGP Disu orders police to treat mob violence as homicide, warning against extrajudicial killings. And in Tanzania, the Vice President Nchimbi quit, announces exit from politics and public service. Remember, you may send in your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on your screen. Follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, on Able TV and on YouTube. Well, many thanks for watching. I am Chisom Okafor, and I'll see you tomorrow.